and your mind has allowed you to hear. Dr. DiOrio, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much.
Thank you for having me.
And, you're a fantastic guest, and we want to welcome now. We have Dr. Joseph Burke, and we would like to welcome him, and we have some music for this.
Only for you, only for you, feelings that flow through my heart, no one knows them, they're only for you, only for you, growing each day in the sun, tasting the raindrops that fall one by one, like a flower my heart is in bloom, and with all that I do, it's only for you, for you, only for you, only for you. Now that I know you so well, I can give myself only for you, only for you, trusting you now with my heart, holding you close every night in the dark. What we have is too sacred and pure to be shared with the rest of the world. Closing my eyes, I can be where you are. We can make that connection no matter how far. There's one star we've chosen to light up the sky. As long as it shines on our love, I will prove that it's true. Only for you, for you, for
Well,
you.
Dr. Burke, how are you?
Very happy to be here tonight. Thank you, Miranda.
That's great. It's great to see you again.
Yes, we're going to be talking about this nonprofit organization, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. That's CSETI. And what CSETI is it's a group that's focusing on the human-extraterrestrial relationship. What we're trying to do is build human-initiated ties with those extraterrestrial groups visiting the Earth at this time. Now, for some of you out there, this may be quite a lot to take in, because popular notion is that science fiction is says that extraterrestrials are out there, but no factual information on the subject. Well, the Center for CSETI has actually developed protocols to enable us to contact the extraterrestrial visitors who are here. I got involved about a year and a half ago. I was never terribly interested in UFOs, but I attended a meeting, and I happen to be a medical doctor. I work in an emergency room, and up there at this UFO meeting was Dr. Stephen Greer, also an emergency room physician, and he was the founder of our organization. And the protocols of CSETI have been successful in being able to attract extraterrestrial spacecraft into a number of research sites. We were successful at Gulf Breeze on March 14th, 1992, where no less than 4 and perhaps 7 craft were vectored in. I was witness to the February 1st, 1993 encounter at the base of Popocatépetl volcano, that's about 100 miles southeast of Mexico City, where no less than several craft were in the vicinity, and a 300-foot triangular-shaped craft responded to our research efforts, our protocols, and came in at night and interacted with us with powerful lights. So I'm here to tell you tonight that the extraterrestrial hypothesis as the explanation for UFOs is no hypothesis. They're here, and it's about time for humanity to go out and say hi.
I think that is fantastic, Dr. Burke. I, myself, being such a space cadet, I also am a physician associate, and I have a master's degree in behavioral medicine. And like I was saying earlier, the way I was led to this fascinating subject was because I walked outside. I went to college for 13 years. I never wasted my time with anything other than reading and educating myself and lecturing, and I arrived here. And I always thought it was a joke until I finally started researching myself and found out that, no, there's some truth to this. There's biblical proof. There's all kinds of, if you speak to the right people and you get the correct material and facts, there is too much to not. It's actually, I was told it is a luxury not to believe or not to acknowledge this.
Right. Well, I don't consider myself a believer in UFOs. I consider myself a witness to their presence. I can believe in my country, the strength of my marriage, and an almighty God, but the extraterrestrials and their spacecraft are here. We're witness to them. And let's face it, that a majority of Americans who express an opinion on the subject feel similarly. Yes, as amazingly as it seems, that as people's educational status and socioeconomic status goes up, in the numerous Gallup polls that have been done over the years, their acknowledgement that some UFOs are extraterrestrial spacecraft, flying saucers, that goes up too. So it's very important to take note of that perhaps 10% of the population have seen UFOs, and a smaller number, who are now gaining the public's eye, have had close interactions with craft and with extraterrestrial beings. Now, this doesn't mean that individuals who speak out are not exposed to ridicule. The ridicule factor is something that's very common. People get a funny expression on their faces when they start talking about ETI, extraterrestrial intelligence. But nevertheless, there's very strong indications to show that extraterrestrials have been here for decades, if not for centuries, and they are responsible for many of the UFOs that we are seeing in our vicinity.
I'm very, very inspired by what you say, because I always believed an authority person is someone who has researched and studied a lot, and they're very conscientious about getting up and speaking about such delicate and sensitive material. I have to say I'm very, very proud of you, and you are a real human being, a real person to stand up. You must walk your talk, because a lot of people will wear two faces. The one when they see their patients, and another one when they're dealing with another, another element. And I think that's a way of the past. I really think that there's a whole new group of thinkers who realize that nobody appreciates mistruth or any kind of a facade, and people are too intelligent to really...
You mentioned the word patience. I'd like to share some important information with the listening public.
Please
One
do.
of my colleagues, I'm an emergency room physician. I work in the San Fernando Valley in a large HMO. One of my colleagues, we're partners in the same group, has done an interview at his medical center. It hasn't been published in the medical literature, but I'll give you the results. And that is that of over 1,000 people interviewed, 10%, and these are people whose medical histories are quite well known. They're not alcoholics, they're not psychotics. These are ordinary people who are part of our group practice. 10% have seen a UFO. 5% of these 1,000, or approximately 50, 60 people, have been so close that they've been able to see structured craft, and they can draw the structure of the craft when asked. And amazingly, 1 to 2% of people have had close interactions either with extraterrestrial beings or missing time, the phenomena by which people experience interactions with extraterrestrial beings. Now, I'd like to tell you out there that our patients are not liars. We have their medical histories. This is a very widespread, robust phenomena that's been going on for decades. And even though popular wisdom often causes people to joke about it or feel uncomfortable, this is something that's growing, and people are coming forward now to identify themselves as witness to the human-extraterrestrial interaction.
Dr. Burkes, I think this is a very good time to communicate to the audience, to the listeners, how they can join. CSETI and what the protocol is?
Well, the protocols have to do with sight, sound, and consciousness. If you review the UFO literature, you find that on numerous occasions, people have interacted with extraterrestrial spacecraft, either through flashing a light, and the craft will flash a light back, or through consciousness. People who have seen UFOs have thought on numerous occasions, and this is documented in the literature, oh, I wish it would come back, or they'd express the desire. And to their amazement, the craft would then turn and approach them. So it's very likely that these extraterrestrial visitors have developed consciousness-assisted technologies to allow them to communicate via, well, for want of a better word, telepathy. And after all, they've had millions or perhaps billions of years to evolve on other star systems and planets. It's not inconceivable that they would use consciousness or telepathic means to communicate. So we do use meditation practice, thought transmission as one of the modalities that we use. But not only. We also use powerful lights, 500,000 candle power lights, which are charged, or we run them off our vehicles. Because, the scientific basis for it is that the UFO literature has shown that these craft do appear at laser light shows or outdoor projections of motion pictures. So using powerful lights is another modality to attract in, or as Dr. Stephen Greer, our national director, says, vector in spacecraft. The final modality that we use is sound. What we do is we have a number of recordings of anomalous sounds, one of which was recorded within a crop circle, and we play these tones on site in specially chosen research sites that are secure. We go out into the field late at night, we use our powerful lights, we play these tones, we meditate, and believe it or not, on no less than 3 occasions, craft have come in to our sites. We've been able to document it. I've seen the videotape, and at our lectures and public meetings we show the videotapes of the Gulf Breeze encounter, demonstrating that these craft do respond to efforts to initiate contact.
You know, this is just absolutely fantastic. I just love listening to you talk. Just keep talking.
Well,
I want to hear more.
You mentioned about our organization. First of all, we're a tax-exempt, nonprofit educational organization.
That's great.
We've been able to convince the government that this is not a hoax. We're not trying to sell snake oil or anything like that. Well, we are run totally by contributions from our members. All the contributions go to research. It's a commercial station, so I won't be making a big pitch. You'll be hearing later on about other important messages. But for people who want to get in touch with the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, that's CSETI, you can write. And remember, there may be a delay because our volunteer staff sometimes takes a while to get to answer your letters, but take down this information. We're located in Asheville, North Carolina, at CSETI. That's P.O. Box 15401. I'll repeat it again. P.O. Box 15401, Asheville, North Carolina, 28813. That's North Carolina, 28813. And that's the organization is CSETI, Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. We have nothing to do with the government-financed program of SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. We look at that $100 million program as somewhat naive or perhaps boondoggle. We don't need to use enormous radio telescopes to listen to messages from the extraterrestrials, because there's overwhelming evidence from thousands of photographs and tens of thousands of interactions, witnesses to craft by credible observers, scientists, military pilots. Their presence is well known. We don't need to use large radio telescopes to prove what's obvious, that extraterrestrial intelligence and spacecraft are here. And it's about time that humans take the high road, rather than sort of cowering or stepping into the shadows or standing there with our jaws sort of dropping from our faces. Take the initiative to communicate. This is a preliminary venture. Our organization is very new. We're just 3 years old. But we hope that over a longer period of time, we can initiate full diplomatic relations with these visitors, and they perhaps can assist us as we may be able to assist them in their life's work.
I'm just so proud of what you're doing. I just think it's fantastic, and I really hope we have some professionals out in the listening audience who realize that you are probably stepping way above where they're at, because you're continuing to research and educate yourself and the public. You're taking the initiative, and I believe that is part of the Hippocratic Oath somewhere in there, is to take responsibility to educate and to teach. And I think that's a moral obligation, and I think it's something that people really have to take more serious, and I admire that you really are stepping out there. I just admire that so much, and I wanted to ask you, how did you approach the government on this to get their acknowledgement on this?
You know, I think in terms of our status with the government, we're a nonprofit educational organization. We're not a political organization. We're not into lobbying. And we're into initiating low-level interactions. We're not trying to set ourselves up as the United Nations. As far as the government goes, I think you have to acknowledge the fact that there are special sections of the government that operate on probably above top secret basis that have been involved in studying the extraterrestrials some time. Because of the difficulties in explaining why the visitors are here and why some of their interactions are frightening to people, the government has taken a program of silence and attempts at ridiculing witnesses of UFO. We feel this is unfortunate, but one can certainly understand some of the motivations behind the government's concerns when their mission is to defend our skies, and these craft can move with impunity across the planet and can outfly and presumably, if attacked, outfight any of our conventional aircraft.
So true.
So the government's role has been relatively passive, except for perhaps some very high-level studies, presumably above top secret. But I think, and I'm approaching this as a citizen's diplomat, I think we have to take the lessons from the people's diplomacy movement of the peace movements of the early 1980s. I was an activist within the international physicians movement. This was physicians from both sides of the Iron Curtain that educated the public and government leaders about the medical consequences and the dangers of nuclear war.
It's fantastic.
And so when I heard about this diplomatic citizens initiative to reach out to extraterrestrials, I was very attracted to it. In our physicians anti-nuclear weapons movement, we had a slogan, and that was that peace was too important to be left to the generals and to the politicians.
Right on, that's
because
true.
we had shared fates with the Soviets, because the threat of nuclear arms race could perhaps annihilate life as we know it, we felt it was every citizen's responsibility to reach out to the people on the other side to build bridges and end the threat of nuclear annihilation. Well, similarly, in the efforts to contact extraterrestrial intelligence, CSETI and other groups, I believe, state categorically that contact is too important to be left to the politicians, to the generals. This is something that all humanity can benefit from, and therefore a citizens' initiative, albeit a low-level diplomatic one, interacting so far with lights and with other rather primitive means, must be put on the agenda of all of humanity. So we're approaching this not to get a $1 million photograph to sell to the National Enquirer,
really,
or heavens forbid to find the basis of their propulsion systems to make a better bomb or a better spacecraft. We're approaching this from the most basic level, and that is consciousness, contact for peaceful purposes, cooperation for the benefit of both extraterrestrials and all of humanity.
I don't think there's anyone out there that can argue with what you've said. You are so eloquent. I'm just amazed.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Miranda. You know, I think people out there should have confidence in themselves. When you see a UFO, and the CSETI message, when translated into its simplest form, is just don't stand there with your mouth open. If you see a UFO, signal at it. Take out a flashlight.
Right. More
likely than not, they will signal back. And over a period of time, trust can be built up so that we can have higher levels of interaction and exchange.
That's so true. You know, I love what you just said. Just keep talking, but I want to say something. I'm going to be joining your organization, and you go out in the field work?
That's right. We have specially trained investigators. This is something that can't be done lightly. We go out into the field all hours of night. It involves some hiking. It requires training and meditation practice. not only to settle your nerves, because when these craft do show up, as they showed up in Mexico when I was there, can be quite awe-inspiring. But we also use meditation because on the basis of consciousness, we have more to share with these extraterrestrial peoples than what divides us. As conscious, intelligent beings, we can interact with them, and meditation practice facilitates that interaction. We're not inviting any members of the press corps to go with us so they can get their $1 million photograph to sell.
For the Inquirer.
We do make attempts at documentation, although there have been some technical problems with that. Perhaps at a later time I can get into more detail about what happened to our team of CSETI researchers at the interaction that I was witness to at the Popocatépetl volcano. We had some technical problems. But there are videotapes that do show our Gulf Breeze encounter, and it was on the basis of this hard evidence that convinced me, a somewhat sober-minded emergency room physician, to join this very important endeavor.
You know, did you see the video Messengers of Destiny?
Oh, yes, and that was that video, which, by the
powerful.
way, you can send away for. It's very powerful. It started when the total eclipse of the sun on July 11th, 1991 took place, and instead of videoing the eclipse, 17 people with their home recorders videoed a flying saucer, an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
That's right.
So the video revolution has fundamentally changed the way we are interacting with the extraterrestrials, giving us the opportunity to document in very powerful ways their presence and sharing that information to all those who are open enough and fearless enough to listen.
You know, I lived in Mexico City, and I used to go to the pyramids. I used to frequent the pyramids. As a matter of fact, after I saw Messengers of Destiny...
That's the videotape that documents the sightings which have been seen by hundreds of thousands of people in Mexico City area.
And what was fascinating was when I was in Mexico City, they talked about the Aztec calendar, that not only does it scientifically explain the future events, but also coincides with biblical events, which is really interesting. And one of the things, I was so inspired that I'm planning to do a music video on the pyramids in a couple of weeks. So I'll be going there to do that because I lived there, I was fascinated by it, and I look where it's led me. I'm here in this country doing this. Why is it Mexico is a place that they frequent, and Egypt? What is it about? Well, they're coming here too, but...
Well, I think it's likely that their presence has been experienced for thousands of years.
Correct.
Civilizations in the past, many of them have claimed their origin to be from the stars. It's not impossible to think that benevolent extraterrestrials could have interacted over the millennium with us to assist us. There's no proof of that. It's conjecture. It's highly speculative. But the purpose of CSETI is to move beyond speculation and get out there and interact, get some hard data to figure out what's going on, and to extend a hand of peace and cooperation to the visitors.
Dr. Burke, I want to thank you very, very, very much for today, for being a part of this